We'll go ahead and come to order at this time. It's now time for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And then I'll just come back here after.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll proceed with roll call. Start with Rick.
Rick Birchloff, present.
Walt Wiley, President. Present.
Deb McSherry, present.
Patrick Steyer.
I'd like to move for an approval of the October 14th agenda, and also at the same time, item number 4, the approval of the September 18th, 2024 minutes.
I make a motion to approve both agenda and minutes.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Now we'll move on to our public safety. We have an emergency going on outside, so we invite the sheriff to come forward, please.
Hey, good afternoon, or evening, I'm sorry. Been here a minute. All righty. My name is Lieutenant Manuel Cavazos. I am one of the watch commanders out of the Auburn Station. I'm here to present some information to you. Through the month of September, from 9/1 to 9/30, we had 208 incidents in this area, the Western Placer Municipal area. We took 20 reports. We had 12 transient-related activities and actions. We had 124 citizen calls and 84 deputy-initiated calls. The priority of calls, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, 1 being the most emergent priority, with 9 being something we would consider an extra patrol or something of that nature. So we've had 51 1 calls, 2 priority calls, 38, 49 3 calls, and so on, as you can see. The dispositions of these calls, the top 10 dispositions were we contacted just the person. We said there was no crime. We just contacted them from consensual type reasons. The second would be the PC with probable cause. We had probable cause to stop some folks. The third was unable to locate maybe the call. They told us there was a suspicious vehicle or a person in the area. By the time we got there, they were gone. The next category would be assisting another agency. That would be whether it's CHP, fire, maybe some sort of county entity that needed our assistance, that we'd come out. CP was closed prior to us getting there. Report taken, false alarms. We made arrests, canine apprehensions, and canine assists are those. So if you look, we had 21 suspicious activity calls, 19 disturbance calls, 14 alarm calls, and we conducted 40 traffic stops during this month. A fairly busy month with a lot of proactive stuff going on in this area. Guess would be questions.
Any questions from? No. I think we're feeling very protected.
That's good. We
and I
aim to
appreciate
please.
that.
And
Yeah,
I'm happy.
in
by
all
the way.
seriousness too, it's we feel a great response. I know I do, and I'm out where your response is right now. So, or was this afternoon.
We're
So
still there.
yeah, it was evident.
That's good. Yeah, we like I said, we really take pride in the level of service we provide the community, the constituents within the county, and the service area that we provide. So if there's ever any issues, I urge you to contact us, contact a field level supervisor or field level manager, and we can make sure that we're satisfying your issues.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, yes, sir.
I have a question.
Sure.
A month ago, very close to Morgan Creek,
Okay.
there were 2 helicopter police with 6 police cars. You could hear on the speaker, the black jacket, on the right, on the right. I could hear it from my house.
I can't.
I don't see it on the report. Is that
So I'm sorry.
alarm call? It's like, what was that?
So I can't tell you specific information about that call because if I would have known prior, I could have looked it up to see exactly what category it would have been under. That could be a bunch of different things. It could be technically, it could be a disturbance call, or it could be a suspicious activity call. It could be an arrest call. One of those stats that you see there.
It was pretty serious and loud. That's why.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a disturbance call or alone. I don't know. I mean, okay.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, you may have addressed this, I may have missed it, but what is the percentage increase from the norm?
Sure. He asked if the stats here are increased from the normal stats. And I apologize. I don't have the previous stats committed to memory, or I don't know what they are. I can tell you, judging by some of the other areas that we patrol, these stats are a little bit lower than some of the areas we patrol. That's pretty much, I'm sorry, because I looked at some other stats today, but not the historical stats for here. Yes, sir. It's okay, please.
I'm trying to be quick. I mean, we're part of the board, and we have some report of stolen or solar, some items, some teenagers stole some of the parts and equipment from our communities. It seems like it was not reported to you. The stolen items is not captured here, right? Anything stolen, lottery or anything like that is not captured, right?
No, that would fall under the report taken, or the 20 reports, within the 20 reports taken.
Oh, that's the one. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thanks. You also need names for the record. Your name, sir? My name? Rod. Last name? Delbar. Delbar. And sir in the back?
Don Witt.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Very good.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for giving me up so soon.
Do we have a representative from the Highway Patrol here this evening, or the Fire Department? Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Brian Macwood. I'm an assistant chief with Placer County Fire and CAL FIRE. Just a kind of quick update for us. Obviously, we've had a little taper off in the weather, which has been really nice for us. That triple digit, we obviously were very active with initial attack fires throughout the unit. With the precip that's come in today, please just remember it wasn't a lot. So burning is still shut down at this point, and we are preparing ourselves for red flag warnings that are going to be happening throughout the Sac Valley up into the lower portions of the foothills that will truly be lasting from starting tomorrow at some point mid-morning to mid-afternoon all the way through Friday and into early Saturday morning. So my suggestion is just keep good eyes and be prepared to, if there's any fires that happen locally in the area, to be prepared with your prepared kits to get out if anything's threatening anywhere at any point. Just remember that. Know your evacuation routes, et cetera, and we've upstaffed, just for us, we've upstaffed with additional water tenders. We've upstaffed our hand crews are now on a 24-hour response. Aircraft, we've staged equipment throughout the Sac Valley, including engines that are all over the place. So we are prepared to see what happens out of this thing. So you never know. These months between, October and November, historically, those are some of our largest, fires that we've had historically. So just remember that, even with the downturn with the weather and the temperatures, just remember the winds are really the overriding factor when it comes to these large fires. So, and a report from me. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Rick Reedman. I'm getting this information third hand, so I want to qualify that. My understanding is there was an individual who had a bicycle accident on the bike trail here on Cocoriolo, and 2 different people called 911. They got different dispatches. Finally, somebody ran down to the fire station. So I think there's an issue with cellular service and CAL FIRE dispatch in this particular area. So it's just FYI.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it, but I certainly will look into it. Typically, those cell 911 calls go through a couple of PSAPs, and it initially gets through CHP, and then it routes through whatever jurisdiction it sits in. So if it's Placer County or Grass Valley for us, however that lays out. But I'm not familiar with it, and I don't want to give you any false information. So let me look into it, and I can report on the next meeting if that's okay. You got it. Any other questions? Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move forward to item number 6, action items, the ranch subdivision. Presented by Kara Conklin, Senior Planner.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Not Kara. We'll get there in a moment. My name's Alex Fish. I'm a principal planner with the Planning Services Division. Kara is going to provide the full project presentation. She will introduce the county staff and members of the project team. I just wanted to provide first a high-level overview of the project timeline leading up to tonight's MAC presentation, as well as the process moving forward, and then Kara will provide the full details. So this project that she's going to present, the ranch subdivision, this is our third visit to the MAC. This was initially presented to the MAC in April of 2022, just prior to the project application to solicit early input and feedback on the project. It was initially proposed as a 600-unit project. Issues raised by the MAC and members of the public at that time included issues such as project density, changes to community plan character and rural setting, water demand, traffic impacts to area roadways, and impacts to EMS services such as fire, sheriff, and CHP. Project was also presented a second time as an information item in January of 2023. And at that time, the project density had been reduced from the initially proposed 600 units to 484 units. We had some additional details pertaining to proposed public road improvements, park and recreation improvements, as well as to improvements to the school facility here to facilitate pickup and drop off. As many of you know, we did the county has prepared an environmental analysis of the project. That's an EIR, or Environmental Impact Report. The notice of preparation of that EIR was circulated in January of 23, January 18th, and for a 60-day, I believe it was a 45-day NOP scoping period. We did hold a scoping meeting in January of 23. During that period of time, we did send notices of the project to 40 property owners, 43 local agencies, special districts, and utility providers. We also published a notice in the SAC-B of that. More recently, the county circulated the draft EIR, which is the initial environmental analysis of the project. That was in July of this year. That was released for the 45-day public comment period, and we held a meeting before the Placer County Planning Commission on August 8th. Of this year. We did have 17 persons from the public who participated in that hearing, received a total of 46 comment letters. 7 of those were from local agencies and organizations. The others were from private citizens. We just recently, on the 8th of this month, October, published the final EIR. As I think most of you know, the Planning Commission hearing to consider the project entitlements is next week on the 24th. And then we are anticipating that the project will have a final hearing before the Board of Supervisors late this year or early next year. We haven't figured out the final details there. So with that, I will turn it over to Kara.
Is this a double mic? What's this one
You're
down here?
doubled down there, yeah. You can
Thank
turn
you,
it
Alex. Thank you, MAC members. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for sharing your Wednesday evening with me. I am Kara Conklin. I am a senior planner with the Planning Services Division. And this evening, I will be presenting for your consideration the ranch subdivision. So the project site is a total of 221.7 acres. It's located south of Vineyard Road. east of Dry Creek School, north of the Creekview Ranch subdivision, and west of the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant. The current zoning for the project site is farm, combining development reserve, combining a minimum building site of 4.6 acres and open space. The land use for the project site is rural low-density residential, 1 to 2.3 acre minimum, and greenbelt and open space. These are just some images of the existing project site. On the right, you can see the entrance to the Winton Ranch property, and some more images of the project site as it is today. So the proposed project for the ranch is 446 residential lots with an additional 45 accessory dwelling units. Entry to the project site would be up here on the eastern boundary with a roundabout off of Vineyard Road, and it would connect into a series of internal roads. The second entry would be on the western portion of the project site. It's also a roundabout, which would provide a school access road that goes south along the western boundary to provide an entrance to the project site, as well as a school pickup and drop-off location. It's a roundabout with some parking spaces, which would provide drop-off and pickup to the adjacent Creekview Ranch School. It also provides, a school access and expansion area. So I was just talking about that. The expansion area is also this small little parcel. It's a 2 in the small lot tentative map, and that is a parcel that would be donated to the Dry Creek School District. The project does propose 2 gated entryways at those entrances, the one on the west and again the one on the northeast. The project also provides a 13.3 acre private park and also includes 11.4 miles of private and public trails. There is a public trail access that comes off of Vineyard Road here and follows an existing PG&E easement with a meandering paseo that would provide access directly down to the Dry Creek Greenway Trail that follows the southern boundary of the project site. There it is, popped up. The project has a total of 64.45 acres of open space, which comprises about 29% of the project site. The project is requesting the following entitlements. So they are requesting a general plan, Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan map amendment that proposes to change the land use designations from rural low density 1 to 2.3 acre minimum and greenbelt and open space to medium density residential and greenbelt and open space. They are proposing a general plan text amendment to the Placer County General Plan Table 1-5. That's related to the minimum public facility buffer zone width for residential uses that are adjacent to the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant facility. The project is requesting a rezone from its current zoning of farm, combining development reserve, combining a minimum building site of 4.6 acres, and open space to residential single family, combining a minimum building site of 6,000 square feet, and open space. The project is also requesting approval of a large lot tentative subdivision map to subdivide the 221.7 acre site into 13 large lot parcels that correspond to the park, open space, school, and residential villages. They're requesting a vesting phased small lot tentative subdivision map to subdivide the residential parcels into approximately 446 single-family residential lots, ranging in size from 6,000 to 25,000 square feet. And the applicants are also seeking a conditional use permit, and that is to allow a park in the park and recreational amenities within the open space zone district. This image shows the existing land use that is currently on site. So on the right, you can see that It is 181 acres of rural low-density residential, and then 40.6 acres of green belt and open space, and that's that Dry Creek corridor along the south right there. Oops. The proposed land use would be on the right, and as you can see, it is showing an increase in the open space from 40.6 acres to 75.5 acres, and 144.2 acres of medium density residential. And here we have the existing zoning on the left, which shows 81 acres of farm, combining development reserve, combining a minimum building site of 4.6 acres and 48.6 acres of open space, to the proposed residential single family, combining a minimum building site of 6,000 square feet at 144.2 acres and open space of 77.5 acres. Affordable housing. So, in accordance with Placer County's affordable housing program, any project would need to require, that is greater than 100 units, would need to require 10% of the project's units would be required to be affordable. So for this project, 45 affordable housing units are required. The proposed project would meet the affordable housing requirement by providing 45 accessory dwelling units, those are called ADUs, on site. And if they are 750 square feet or less, they are considered affordable by design within the Placer County housing element. The EIR evaluated the potential environmental impacts that are associated with the total number of anticipated ADUs and 446 single-family units. As previously mentioned, the project is providing a 13.03 acre private park that is publicly accessible, and it would provide open turf space area. It would provide a covered patio area, barbecue pits, an orchard, a tot lot, and trails and benches within the park space. Along here, there is trails that kind of go through and meander through the park. Again, 11.4 miles of public trails. So we have the PG&E access trail that goes from the north to the south, and then the Dry Creek Greenway Trail, which traverses from the east of the project site all the way to the west. The project does propose to expand that regional greenway trail all the way to Cook-Riola Road and connect to the underpass there. So it would go across the Dry Creek School. And then the project also provides to 64.45 acres of open space. The project is proposing to dedicate the Dry Creek corridor. In the project, it is known as Open Space 2, which is this whole southern area here, to the Placer County or Placer Conservation Authority, PCA. So it would be donated into their preserve system. And the landscape plan. So the project is proposed to install 16.8 acres of landscaping and common areas and project entries, the Vineyard Road landscape corridor, the north-south Paseo, as well as the two roundabouts and the park. Tree species would include holly oak, interior live oak, and California sycamore. The landscaping for the project is required to comply with Placer County landscape design guidelines, as well as the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan guidelines, and includes native and drought-tolerant plants. The project does propose to have gated entryways. The community plan itself does not specifically prohibit gated subdivisions, but that entryways must allow for dawn to dusk unrestricted pedestrian access. So the gates that are proposed here, pedestrian access would be located here, along with a steel gate and wood rail fence between the posts, and steel 3D letters that identify the project, the ranch. They also propose to have something very similar to this water tank tower monument at the project entry. The Vineyard Road frontage will include a setback buffer of 50 feet. So from the roadway, the buffer would be 50 feet. And then along here, this is the wall to the sound wall to the project. And it would be heavily screened with landscaping. It would also include an 8-foot meandering sidewalk. And the proposed sound wall would include a 4-foot berm with a 4-foot masonry wall and then 2-foot open metal fence on the top of that. All the homes that are proposed along the Vineyard Road northern boundary are required to be single story. Those lots will also be a minimum of 25,000 square feet. So on the south here, you can see the images of what is proposed to be the landscaped walkway along the vineyard frontage. So the project site would be conditioned for some off-site work. They are required to lengthen the northbound left turn lane along Vineyard Road and Foothills Boulevard at that intersection to the satisfaction of the city of Roseville. The project would also be required to connect to the existing Creekview Ranch sewer lift station, which is at the southern boundary of the Dry Creek School site. And then once that capacity has been reached, the project would be required to upgrade that lift station once the capacity has been reached. So in this image on the right, the concrete here would be removed at that Foothills Boulevard and that intersection to extend that northbound left turn lane. General plan amendment. So the applicants are requesting a modification to the general plan table 1-5 in relation to the minimum public facility buffer zone width in relation to residential uses that are adjacent to the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant. That amendment would add a footnote to the table under sewage treatment plant options. That buffer currently is 1,000 feet. And the footnote would read, buffer widths for the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant may be modified on a case-by-case basis with approval from the plant operator, in this case the city of Roseville, and the county. Project shall incorporate measures recommended by the city of Roseville and the county that address land use compatibility, for example, noise, odor, and aesthetics. The city of Roseville, who operates the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant, provided their concurrence with this proposal, the general plan text amendment, with the implementation of a few things. The first being that the applicant would construct a 6-foot masonry wall on 6 lots that are immediately north of the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant. That they would minimize tree removal in that area and retain the existing vegetation on the north-south property line, as well as providing a notification to future homeowners about potential nuisances such as noise and odor. A community plan is also requested to change the land use designation of the project site from rural low-density residential 1 to 2.3 acre minimum and greenbelt and open space to residential, or I'm sorry, that's an error. It's supposed to be medium density residential and open space. As you can see from this image here, this image shows us from the community plan the areas that are identified as having a development reserve area within the community plan. And that is this area here in the south, and it kind of traverses up north through the project site and then north of Vineyard Road. The Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan did anticipate development of the project site that was a part of the Dry Creek Riparian Corridor. The purpose of Development Reserve Combining District is to provide the future development of limited residential, commercial, or industrial uses in areas that are identified by the general plan or any community plan for such uses. Now, due to the Dry Creek Riparian Corridor kind of bisecting this area here, It was determined that it's not a functioning cohesive unit as a north-south vehicular crossing, and any crossing of the creek is very cost prohibitive. The community plan amendment is requested to change the land use designation once again from rural low density to medium density residential. And this is an image of the surrounding developments within the area. So some of the recently approved projects in the eastern portion of the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan area have trended towards smaller lot sizes. For example, we have the Morgan Creek and Riolo Greens portions that are west of the project site, and they have a minimum lot size of 9,500 square feet. Double S Ranch, which is directly adjacent to the project site on the west, has 36 lots at a 24,000 square foot minimum. Creekview Ranch, which is approved and I think currently under construction, has a minimum lot size of 3,400 square feet. And then Brady Vineyard, which is to the northwest of the project site, has a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet, as well as some other projects that have as low as 3,100 square feet. So as Alex previously mentioned, just to kind of go through the background of the environmental review process, a notice of preparation was published in January of 2023. That public comment period went from January 8th to February 16th. The county also held a public scoping meeting to obtain comments on the notice of preparation on January 6th, 2023. On July 12th of this year, we released the draft environmental impact report for 45-day public comment review period. And then we also held the draft environmental impact report public comment meeting at the Planning Commission on August 8th, 2024. The final environmental impact report was released on October 8th. So the impacts that are analyzed in the environmental impact report included aesthetics, agricultural resources, air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, biological resources, cultural resources, energy, geology and soils, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, land use and planning, population and housing, noise, public services and utilities, transportation, tribal cultural resources, and wildfire. The draft EIR also evaluates effects not found to be significant and includes statutorily required sections and an alternatives analysis. The highlighted portions of these resource areas were determined to be less than significant with the incorporation of mitigation measures. All right, and so the significant and unavoidable impacts for the project site. 4 impacts were determined to be significant and unavoidable, even with implementation of recommended mitigation measures. These impacts included 2 impacts from the aesthetics section. Impact 4.2, degrade the existing visual character or quality of public views of the site. And impact 4-4, cumulative long-term changes in visual character. So it was determined that with the development of the project would substantially change the existing visual character and aesthetics of the project site, and that even with significant landscaping and measures to make the site look well, it still impacts the visual character of the area. The next impacts were under agricultural resources. Impact 5-1, convert prime farmland, unique farmland, or farmland of statewide importance. And impact 5-4, changes in the existing environment, cumulative cumulatively result in a loss of farmland. And that is due to the fact that this area is considered, a portion of it is farmland of statewide importance, and then a portion of it is farmland of local importance. And it would be converting this project or this land from an agricultural use to a non-agricultural use. Traffic. So at build-out, the project is expected to generate 4,446 daily trips, and that includes 342 a.m. peak hour trips and 452 p.m. peak hour trips when it's fully developed. The proposed project would cause a deficiency at the intersection of Vineyard Road and Foothills Boulevard, and that is why they are required to add that additional storage on the northbound turn lane at that intersection, as well as optimize the signal timing at that intersection. Vehicle miles traveled, VMT. So according to the results of the Placer County VMT estimation tool, the VMT per capita for the proposed project would be 17.98 VMT per capita, which is about 41% less than the average VMT per capita for unincorporated Placer County. Thus, the 15% VMT reduction goal would be met. The comparatively low VMT for the project would occur because the project site is located to major employment and retail centers in the Sacramento and South Placer areas as compared to other areas within the unincorporated Placer County. Habitat impacts. So the project is a covered activity for the Placer County Conservation Program. So it is undergoing an application with the Placer County Conservation Program now to evaluate all of the impacts to special habitats, land cover, and species. So permanent impacts for the project site, it's at 162.7 acres. A majority of that land is cropland and pasture land. Temporary impacts include, 2.8 acres of temporary impact, a land cover conversion of 1.8 acres. The total acreage avoided is 54 acres. Aquatic resource impacts. Permanent impacts for aquatic resources is 3.389, and temporary impacts at just under an acre. Cultural resources. So the project site has 2 historic period resources, 2 graves of the Shell House family members and the historic Winton property. The headstones are eligible for the California Register of Historical Resources, and the resources must be preserved and avoided on site. Winton Ranch is eligible but is not considered a historic property due to additions that happened in the last several years. While the project site contains known cultural resources, the proposed project would not significantly impact any of the known cultural resources on site, and it has implemented appropriate avoidance and minimization and mitigation measures in order to avoid those. Agricultural resources. As previously mentioned, a portion of the project site, approximately 35.6 acres, is designated as farmland of statewide importance. This land is similar to prime farmland, but it has minor shortcomings such as greater slopes or less ability to hold moisture. The image on the right is an image of the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan. It's in the environmental resources element. And it lists significant natural resource features. The area in the green, those are vegetative resources, riparian oak woodland, and the yellowish color is ag lands to be protected pursuant to the plan and those goals and policies of the agricultural element of the Placer County General Plan. Currently, the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan does not identify the project site as agricultural lands to be protected. It states the plan area has soil classified by the State Department of Conservation as prime, farmland of statewide importance, unique farmlands, farmlands of local importance, and grazing land. The productivity of the land is mainly limited by the availability of reasonable surface water for irrigation. And community plan consistency. So the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan was approved in 1990 and serves as the guiding land use document for the project. The project is consistent with many key goals of the community plan, including that it encourages land uses that are compatible with those uses that are existing and planned by adjoining jurisdictions. It locates urban and suburban areas, development in areas where urban services that include school facilities, commercial facilities, and transportation facilities are readily available. It protects and enhances the character of the plan area in a way that is compatible with the physical and natural constraints of the area. It's protecting the Dry Creek Riparian Corridor and providing the Dry Creek Greenway Trail for public access. Provides a safe, diverse, and efficient transportation and circulation system to serve the needs of the residents in the plan area and others who use the system. The rate of development does not exceed the capacity of the county, community, or special district and utility companies to provide all the necessary services and facilities in a timely and orderly manner. Key land use goals. Preserves the outstanding visual features, natural resources, and landmarks of the site. Provides compatibility between the neighboring land uses. It retains natural features as buffers. So, for example, the 50-foot landscape buffer located off of Vineyard Road between potentially incompatible uses. And it preserves the natural features, noise exposures, road access, and relationship to the surrounding properties. And that was considered in preparing the subdivision design. The project provides for private ownership and maintenance of open spaces. It retains important open space features. It uses green belts and landscaped areas along roadways as a design feature. And it also is using them in order to mitigate the noise impacts and provide for valuable open space. This project is a logical expansion of the area by developing an infill area that is close to existing developed areas. It does not expand public services into areas with significant value as rural open space, and development activities are proposed in areas of the least environmental sensitivity. As previously mentioned, the project site and properties to the north with the development reserve designation, a use of a specific plan was determined to be unnecessary due to that Dry Creek corridor bisecting the property. This project also only consists of residential land uses and is subject to the development standards for residential land uses otherwise allowed in the zone. So the criteria for general plan amendments. The county considers the following major issues when evaluating a general plan amendment and a rezone. The need and justification for the amendment, including development plans for the subject property, consistency with general plan goals, policies, and programs, compatibility with surrounding land use designations, existing and proposed land uses and zoning, the rationale for existing map designations and zoning, land suitability and physical constraints, avoidability of adequate access, public services, and facilities to serve the proposed project, potential environmental impacts and mitigation measures, and consistency with state and county standards. So as previously mentioned, this project has come before the MAC several times. In April of 2022, it came before you as an informational item to receive early community feedback. At that time, the project had come forward with 600 lots with a minimum lot size of 4,500 square feet. Access was provided off of Vineyard Road and Eva Lane, and with second access on the west. In January 2023, It came again before your MAC for an informational item with a revised land plan based off of the feedback and public input that was received. And the applicants reduced the number of lots from 600 to 484 lots. They increased the minimum lot size to 5,200 square feet and included a variety of lot sizes, and also provided a new school access road with the pickup and drop-off area. In April of 2023, it was also brought again as an informational item, and this was based off of the previous MAC meetings as well as meeting with community neighbors. The applicant significantly revised the plan by reducing the number of lots from 484 to 446 lots. They also increased the minimum lot size to 5,950 square feet. They reduced the density from 2.2 units per acre to 2 units per acre. They increased the lot sizes along Vineyard Road. There's 17 lots there to a minimum of 25,000 square feet, half-acre lots. They included a 50-foot landscape buffer along Vineyard Road with a requested 4-foot berm, sound wall, 4-foot masonry wall, and 2-foot open fence on the top of there. They adjusted lot configurations to increase the oak tree preservation on the eastern portion of the project. And they moved the primary entrance to the northeast corner away from Eva Lane, and they added roundabouts. So next up after tonight's meeting is that this project would be proposed next Thursday, October 24th, before the Placer County Planning Commission, and then it is scheduled for the Board of Supervisors on December 17th. That could potentially change if they're changing their schedule, but that is where it is tentatively at right now. And with that, staff requests that the West Placer Municipal Advisory Council provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission for the ranch project. And I am available should you have any questions. We also have county staff here. We have Candace Bartlett with our Engineering and Surveying Division, Phil Vashin with our Department of Public Works Division, Alex Fish with Planning, and then we also have the applicant team and some other folks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we get ourselves organized here, I just wanted to let you know that I received the list of people that wanted to make a public statement. So I'm supposed to announce your name, and then what I'll do is I'll name 4 people, and then those 4 people will come up and go ahead and repeat your name again, even though, just in case we get out of order.
I'm
In a
sorry,
minute.
I forgot to
minute.
mention the applicant wanted to
Yeah,
do a
I
presentation.
thought as much. That's why I was waiting for them to get organized. So just letting you know how we're going to roll after this. So the applicant would like to talk to you a bit about this project.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is John Tallman. I'm with West Park Communities. We are the project applicant. As Kara alluded to, this is our 4th time coming back to you, this time for a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Kara's presentation was thorough, comprehensive. I don't have anything to add or to her comments. But what I did want to do is take the opportunity to kind of remind you, as she did at the end of her slide, kind of how we got here tonight. So we came to the MAC in April of 2022 with the project on the on my left of 600 units. That plan had a variety of land uses and had an average density of 2.7 units per acre. After that meeting and listening to the comments from the community, we went back to work on an application, and we developed a plan that you see in the middle. That is 483 units, a 20% reduction over the April 2022 version. Significant changes. Some of the comments we heard in the MAC meeting in April of 22 was congestion on Cook-Riola Road in the mornings, particularly during pickup and drop off at the school. Lot size, and public access to the Dry Creek corridor. So in this plan, we relocated an entrance that had been here to the far west edge of the property. It's a single loaded street. It's a county road that'll take folks down to this location here. We're donating the property here to the school district, both for their pickup and drop off facility as well as additional classroom space. We brought that map to the MAC in January of 2023. We were in the process of starting our environmental document, but we wanted to check back in with the MAC since the project had changed since you had seen it previously. We again received feedback from the community that it wasn't a project that they liked. The MAC made it pretty clear that that wasn't a project that you liked. And so we made a decision after that meeting to reach out to neighbors and folks that had been to the prior two meetings and had expressed some ideas and thoughts on the project. And we actually asked the county to pause our environmental project or process while we set up meetings with the neighbors to sit down. And we brought flimsy paper, we brought our planner with us, and we spent the better part of 2 months working on a revised plan that you see, which is the project before you tonight, which eliminated, there had been, on this map here, there's 37 lots that back to Vineyard. We eliminated those and agreed to a half-acre lot size there, so we went from 37 to 17 lots. The residents were also concerned about two-story homes along there. We agreed to limit homes on those lots to single-story. The folks that, pardon me, the folks that live on Eva Lane were concerned about a four-way intersection here and having the project's main entrance immediately opposite their private road. And they asked if we could move the entrance, the primary entrance to the project further to the east. And so we, you can notice that there's a significant increase in the amount of roadway to serve that, but it was something that the community wanted. This map is a little bit different than the map that's before you. You'll notice that there's not a roundabout here at this location. At that point, we did not have the environmental document prepared, so we didn't know what type of intersection that would be. It's now a roundabout. This is now 444 units. That's an average of 2 units per acre. As Kara mentioned, we have increased the amount of open space to 77 acres. And we presented that to you in April of 2023. And I'd like to read the meeting minutes from that meeting. Therein it says, the MAC members as well as the community expressed satisfaction with the changes, and it felt it was a much better project and took into consideration the community at large. So with that, we respectfully request your affirmative recommendation to the Planning Commission.
Well, I don't think that the entire MAC committee was pleased with the presentation. And I believe that you've been invited back since April 2023 to give this proposal to the MAC, and you did not apply, you decided not to come back. Is that correct?
Well, on the on the meeting minutes.
No,
you've
it wasn't
approved
the
meeting
entire
minutes.
MAC. It was not because
The
I
meeting
didn't
minutes
show
reflect
approval
what
of it.
happened at the MAC meeting, and you approved those meetings at the following. As far as a meeting with to come back to the MAC after this project went to environmental, at that point there was no change that could be made. We'd already started the environmental document. So this was the project. The folks that had expressed interest in us coming back, we did sit down with a group of them and had a meeting and explained kind of how we got to where we are. So we could come back, but there was not an ability to change. And so setting people's expectations to come and have input on a project and then be turned away, then that just didn't seem to be a good use of anybody's time.
Which is kind of where we are tonight, right?
Exactly.
So
Now,
the
tonight is
input,
where-
the
exactly.
input from these people doesn't
Absolutely.
matter tonight, right?
Absolutely.
Is what you're telling me.
Correct. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Rick, I'm going to turn some time over to you now.
Lucky me. Okay, I'd like to be the one to start this off. I wasn't here on the MAC during the first couple of meetings. and I'm not sure how many people were here during that time period, but I will tell you, a lot has changed in the last year since you came to the MAC. And a lot of things are happening around this community that most community owners are not happy with. So I have lots of little questions, but I don't want to take all day. But, you know, I look at your community plan amendment, and you used a couple of the different communities as examples as to why yours should be approved, but yet you left out all the other ones that still had 10,000, 9,000, 15,000 square foot lots. You chose to pick the ones, and this is probably for the Planning Commission, as to which ones were important. You know, the 5,000, the 3,100 square feet in the wine country estates, whatever that's called, the Brady Vineyards, and Creekview Ranch. But you really didn't go into, you know, there's Whispering Creek right across the street. There's Cabral Ranch right across the street. You got the two corner lots on Cucuriolo. They were both acre lots. Yes, Creekview Ranch was approved. How that one slipped by, probably because of COVID and a lot of stuff going on during that time period. But as you can tell by the turnout here, the community is not very happy with, you know, 5,000 square foot lots, 5,700 square foot lots, or whatever it's coming out to, the 5,950. Which concerns me because the designation is supposed to be 6,000 square foot lots, but yet we're coming up with 5,950, or 5,975. I'm not sure why. If the new zoning is the BS6 or whatever it is, isn't that supposed to be a minimum of 6,000 square foot lots? So, okay, but yet we have on here that we have 5,900 square foot lots, so.
Environmental impact report meeting at the Planning Commission.
Okay, so 6,000 is the minimum now, is that, okay. So, which lots are you gonna put the ADUs on? Just the lots along Vineyard Road, or you have specific lots already addressed that are gonna have the ADUs? Which I know the county's approved ADUs as being affordable housing, but we know these are not gonna be affordable homes. And what I've seen for people that I know that have ADUs, they're not renting them out. So we're not really getting affordable housing out of these ADUs, but where do you plan on putting the ADUs?
Our proposal is to 10% of each phase of the project will have ADUs with them, so it'll be spread throughout.
Okay, so the lots that are 6,000 square feet, you're gonna have ADUs in some of those?
Correct.
Okay. And again, it has to be 750 square feet or less to be an ADU. As low income ADU, correct, I got that. I still have a problem with, we have a community plan, which is a legal document that is supposed to be followed. Yes, changes can be made, adjustments can be done, requests can be submitted, but it seems like the smaller the developer, the less that happens. The larger the developer, they think they can get away with it. We use an example that we're at the end or near where there's public transportation, which there is no public transportation around here. We're near other developments that have 3, 4, 5,000 square foot lots, which are just the ones that are I think they're in the city of Roseville, not actually part of Dry Creek. But as we move forward to do that, it's gonna get more and more and more, and it's just gonna double the effect. And we've got quite a few developments going in, trying to do the same thing, using the same analysis. But yet we're not looking at the totality of the problem that this is gonna encounter. So I looked at some of the, your trip generations, and you're showing, 4,446 daily trips coming in and out of there. That's a lot of trips on a 2-lane road, both Vineyard and Cucuriolo, not knowing which way they're gonna go. I'm assuming you think they're all gonna go Vineyard. I don't know. The other thing that I'd have a question of, you're having a drop-off for the school. Do we even know how many people come from that side of the school that might utilize that, other than the people that are gonna be in this private community? You also talk about a public park, or a private park, I guess, but public access. How do we get public access if this is a gated community? We have to walk in there? You say it's got barbecue areas and different things you can do, but you're gonna, have to put a wagon together and walk it in there to use any facilities? You're taking prime land away from this community, and you're giving it access to 446 people, or families, I shouldn't say people, because you probably got 1,000 people or so that are gonna be living there, and taking it away from everybody else. You talk about there's no really impact to aesthetics, and that's not true, because now you're gonna have houses that are behind a 4-foot dirt berm, a 4-foot brick wall, and a 2-foot fence. So essentially 10 feet high off of the roadway. You're gonna have this wall that everybody driving down Cucuriolo or Vineyard, that's what they're gonna see, along with rooftops of houses. You won't be able to see any of the trees along the creek. Won't be able to see, I know when I drive out my lane, I can watch the moon come up, I can watch the fireworks go off at the grounds, I can see snow on the mountains, all of that's gonna be gone. You know, and that's not what we all moved here for. And again, I don't know what happened in 22 or 23, but I can tell you what's happening now. People don't want that. On your list, on your trip generations, you did make a mistake on the PM peak hours, which I saw that you fixed it on the other slide. But on the paragraph right below that, you didn't fix it there. You still have 167 PM peak hour trips. I don't know if that impacts any of your other road issues or what is it, vehicles per mile driven or whatever. I'm not sure what I don't remember what designation it is that you use. I don't know if that impacts that or not, but I would think it might. Also, when you say it's below the average of Placer County, is that below the average of Placer County 2-lane roads, or is that below the average of Placer County 4, 5, 6-lane roads? I don't know. You don't really say in that, because that's a lot of traffic that Vineyard and Cucuriolo are going to have to take over on a 2-lane road with roundabouts. And in my experience from all the driving that I've done, and I'm not super old, but I'm old enough that I've driven quite a bit in a lot of different countries and a lot of different states. And in my opinion, 1-lane roundabouts don't work very well. People don't know how to manage a roundabout. 2 lanes, they got a little bit more leeway because somebody can always go through the other lane. But on a 1-lane roundabouts, they create more confusion than anything else. And then you're gonna have a roundabout, 100 feet from the stop sign? So you got 2 roundabouts. I don't know if the stop sign at Eva Lane's planning to stay there, if that's changing, I'm not sure. But you got one at Cucuriolo and Vineyard. So you got a lot of issues going on right along Vineyard Road with a lot of cars going in and out of there every single day. And hopefully your estimates are, accurate. I know they're just projections. You don't know what it'll be, but it's a lot of traffic going through there. You also talk about community plan consistency. Encourages land uses that are compatible with those uses existing and planned by adjoining jurisdictions. I don't know, all the land around there is 1 acre and above, and we're putting 6,000 square foot lots in there. I'm not sure if that's compatible with the rest of the community. It may be compatible with those houses that are right up against Vineyard and Foothills, and it may be with Creekview Ranch that got approved, but nothing else. All the other lots are much larger than that. So I'm not sure if that's being compatible with I consider surrounding properties. I'm not sure that you say you're protecting and enhancing the character of the plan area. Again, I'm not sure how you're protecting that if you're putting 446 houses in there when right now it's got 4. So that seems a little off to me. The rate of development doesn't exceed the capacity of the county, community, special districts, and utility companies. The school's already overburdened. It's just going to get worse. And yes, they're going to have a little spot to add, some other classrooms as needed. We already heard story of law enforcement fire about not being able to respond to a simple 911 call. We know from them coming out and talking to us that, they have one person in law enforcement down in this area in the county that basically, takes care of all of this southern West Placer County. You got 1 or 2 highway patrol, fire department, where they have 3 people now, I think. Not 2. So not a lot of support there when it comes to an actual emergency. So, and response times are critical. If somebody does have, a heart attack or some other physical emergency or a car accident or whatever the case is. So I think we're a little lost with what our community plan consistency is. We're not preserving the outstanding visual features, obviously, because you can't see the mountains as soon as these houses start going up. And again, I mentioned already, it doesn't meet what most of the properties around here are. And yes, as these do get approved, then that will change. But until they get approved, that's what the properties are. Properties are 1 acre plus, and that's what we should be looking at. The community plan says 1 acre plus. Having a half acre, 3/4 an acre, okay, I'm not opposed to growth because we need to have growth. There's a lot going on, but it doesn't need to be growth in the way of, 6,000 square foot homes. That's not going to be affordable housing. The ADUs may be quote unquote classified as affordable housing, but those homes aren't going to be. And those homes with the ADUs, the price of those homes are going to go up because they're going to charge you more for having that ADU. So that's not going to be affordable for people buying it. And again, I know when we looked at houses before we bought our property and had a granny quarter or whatever you want to call it, that wasn't going to be used to rent out. That was going to be, a man cave or, or in my wife's case, a woman cave, but it wasn't going to be used for what the ADUs are being utilized as with our low income. Public services, I mentioned, that's still a big issue. You got 2-lane roads, no sidewalks, no traffic, no lights. So anybody walking, riding the bike, I saw a couple people riding horses yesterday. That was kind of nice to see. A lot of that stuff is just not safe to walk on those roads when there's no sidewalks or anything. And yes, they have put some sidewalks in, and why they stop where they stop them and why they have some on one side of Cucarulo and not the other side of Cucarulo, it just doesn't make any sense. You did push out a couple alternatives, alternative B and C and D, I think, and then obviously the way that the original plan is, or the final plan that you're going with. I think seriously you need to look at one of those alternatives and start thinking about what it is that the community really wants. And I'm sure you'll hear from the community a lot tonight about what they want and what they don't want. So hopefully you'll take that into consideration. The other thing that I really didn't understand, and maybe that's just me, I'm new at this, so your alternative comparison, you had mentioned the comparison of environmental impacts for project alternatives, and it seems like no matter what we did with fewer houses, whether it be 290 fewer, 240 fewer, 176 fewer, it was greater or larger disturbances to the area, which I don't understand. How can you build less houses on less acreage with the same 221 acre footprint, but yet have more land disturbed? It just doesn't make sense to me. Something just doesn't fit. Either you put a lot of houses in there and you disturb all the property, which there's a lot of area that you can't disturb because it's protected, which you talk about having open space and all this good stuff out of the goodness of your heart. You're doing it because you're required to. The park's about the only thing that you're not required to do, and the little sliver that you're gonna give to the school. Everything else around the creek, that's required. You can't build down there. But we're passing it on along, oh, we're doing you a great favor. And even you got 7 houses that you're asking for a change in how far the buffer is supposed to be between the waste treatment plant versus the houses. Why? If it's there and that's what the rule is, follow it. That's all we're asking. If there's a rule in place, which there is based on our community plan, follow it. Pure and simple. I guess I'm done.
Rick will give you another chance here in a bit. Deb?
I don't have anything to say on top of Rick.
Patrick?
Hard following that.
Thank you.
I was here.
Patrick, your mic.
During the earlier meeting. I was here during the earlier meeting. Oh, there we go. I was here during the earlier meetings. And I couldn't believe the 600 in the beginning. And I did make a comment that it seemed like it's almost like we're going to ask for too much so we can go back down to something that's still too much. And I have thought about this the last few days, and you guys have done a lot of positive changes. But I cannot get past the density and the 6,000 square foot lots. And the problem is that you have trees and floodplain, which means you have land, but it really was never going to be built on. But you use the density in order to, and in fact, not only use the density, basically triple the density of what's out there. And I can't get past that as far as just the density. It's going to be compacted, it's crowded. Behind Home Depot down in downtown Sacramento, or off of Del Paso, not Del Paso. Anyway, anyway, the Sacramento area, there's an area that's just west of Home Depot off the freeway at 80, and drive back there sometime. There's playing fields back there, and it's just amazingly crowded. And this is what's going to look like, and you look at some of the comments as far as that we're meeting these requirements and things like that, and we have 4 that they're significant and unavoidable. And so, the visual character is going to change, and the density is going to change, the traffic's going to be changed, the emergency people trying to get to the school is going to be a risk. Like I said, I have a rough time with the densities. I'm done.
Thank you, Patrick. Just a little history. Before I started coming, back in the 90s when I first started coming to the MAC meetings, I was amazed at the MAC because they confronted the applicants. Also, they confronted the Placer County staff in regard to the projects that were coming before them, saying, this is insane, that you can say that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and it's all under the premise of being able to develop this land because we're going to rezone it. And it's pretty evident that the applicant here has come back with a revised project, but it's not a project that would be key to this community. And this is an existing community. And I had always thought that MAC was aggressive in their language, that they put the staff on point and also the applicant. And the applicants back then would actually communicate with the community. And I know that the applicant here has said that they did, but I know that also the feedback from the community is that they have not. The applicant has been invited back to the MAC a number of times, and there is no change that would happen to this project. And that's why the applicant hadn't come back, so he could hear, or they could hear, more of what the community favored in regard to this. When we start looking at areas that, for instance, in regard to the drainage, where it says the portion of this project is designated farmland and statewide importance, this land is similar to the prime farmland, but with minor shortcomings such as greater slopes and less ability to store or hold moisture, which is going to be a lot more moisture than what this project is going to hold in place, I believe. But I don't know that for a fact. And I know that the engineers have done their job. I know that the traffic people have done their job. I know that all of these boxes have been checked and we're moving forward with the project. But this existing community is not favorable of this project, and that's based on what we have had impact us in the last 2 years, basically. When you look at Creekview, which is supposed to be 4 beautiful little villages, and now it turns out that there's these mountains of dirt that are going into the cut and fill. When you look at all of that's happening and how it is changing the entire landscape of this area, Whereas in the past, some things have gone within the contours of what the existing lands are. I think it's unfortunate that the applicant didn't come back to the MAC and didn't have more communication with the existing community. It's been an aggressive behavior on their part to suggest that everything about this project was presented in 3 meetings based on the scope and the size of this project. I know that the people that are here tonight have more of a voice and opinion of this, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that you all have come here tonight. So that being said, I'm not going to detail any further than Rick was very efficient, unless you have anything else to add, Rick. In regard to that, I encourage, now I know that within the whole scope of things that our meeting goes to, we're supposed to do an action, but now I'm going to open this up to the public before we move forward with making an action on this. So I'm changing, as long as nobody on the MAC has objection to it, to opening it to the public. Pat, are you okay with that? Deb?
Yes.
Rick? Okay, so then what I've received, once again, is a list of people that have requested to speak this evening. So we'll start.
I have more too. If you haven't signed up yet and want to speak, I'm over here.
Thank you, Landon, I appreciate that. So we'll start with Dean, Laura, Rick, and Tammy. And you please state your name, full name.
Hi there, is this on? Oh, wow. My name's Dean Shanklin, live in Dry Creek, over 20 years now. Thank you, Kara, for your detailed sales presentation with 35 minutes of the most positive spin on the development with a minimal 1.24 minutes. One whole slide focused on the negative. One would think you work for the developer, and I want to change that. I'm a big advocate of the planners are just planners, and they need to be more than just planners. They need to be advocates for our community or our county. The developer failed to mention that we requested the lot sizes to stay at the community plan of 1 acre minimum. I was at all 3 of those meetings. He just cherry picked the items that he wanted to talk about that were positive, but he failed to mention the things that he did not agree to and did not put into the new plan. I appreciate that he changed some things, but it's not enough. So, Kara, you proposed in your slide presentation a sound wall. We don't have any sound walls in this community on the east side of Dry Creek. They don't even start until you get clear on over by Sabre City. And most of this is all open fencing and open railing in all of our houses that adjoin any major roadway or 1-lane road. And I'm totally opposed to that. And this is the first time I've actually even heard that. The Dry Creek Community Plan anticipated the development of this site. That's what you said. That's fine, but it did not anticipate the rezoning to medium density. Slide 26, you said cropland and pasture. But what you're not considering, you're saying that the site was cropland and pasture, but it didn't consider all the massive wildlife population. We're driving down the street and every day I see a dead deer, dead skunk, dead possum, dead birds. I see all this on the roadways, and those are all those animals are leaving the area where they've lived. And because all this population that we currently have is already tightening up because of all the development, this is just going to make it worse. You talked about cultural resource on slide 27. You indicated that cultural resources would be maintained. That is where the disconnect exists. The land site as it is the cultural resource, not within it. The whole land is our cultural resource. Open land and open space and agriculture is our most valued commodity in this area. And every time you chip away at it, one project at a time, it removes that from us. One thing that the community plan says is promote infill development, reuse and redevelopment, particularly in underserved areas while preserving cultural and historic resources. The cultural definition related to a particular group of people and their habits, beliefs, traditions, and more. The residents of Dry Creek are defined as a group of people who have a particular habit, belief, and traditions. Habits, we live a rural lifestyle free of city lights, noise, and crime. We coexist amongst farm and agricultural properties and accommodate slow growth consistent with our small town values. Our traditions, we are active participants in 4-H, horseback riding, farm animal raising, country walks, and community pride. Our beliefs were generally believe that raising a family in a small town environment is more nurturing for children, are anti-mass growth, but accept responsible growth. So I don't think that this project fits that criteria of promoting infill development and preserving culture and historical resources. Thank you.
Laura Bullard, and I've lived here basically all my life since I was 18 months old or whatever. What I would say is that, you know what, I do recognize that you have made some changes or whatever, but you originally asked for the freaking universe. You brought it down to the world. Okay, now let's bring it down to freaking reality, okay? You talk about the timeline or whatever, okay? You did it in 2022. There was a freaking COVID thing going on. None of these meetings were televised or whatever, so nobody, unless they could come to the freaking meeting or whatever, wouldn't have known anything about it. And you and I had that long discussion or whatever about a project over on Brady that actually was originally proposed in 2005. They gave him an extension because of the economy, and then they gave him an extension because of COVID. Do we get any extension or whatever to save our freaking community because of COVID or anything? Because we were not able to participate. And those people who were at those meetings or whatever, from the local area or whatever, what they said is that basically was handed, hey, this is happening and we don't have any choices. This is the best you're going to get. Okay. The other thing is that you saw that there are going to be 6 freaking entitlements. I don't know what entitles a developer to anything. That's a little bit of a problem. It violates the community plan, as you guys have pointed out in multiple places, and land use is supposed to be predominant as far as the what rules things. In addition, it destroys the last historic part or whatever of our community. Yeah, you know what? The shell houses or whatever, and there's those 2 graves there. Then the Denios had the property or whatever when I was a kid, and then the Setzers came in and took over in about early 1970s or whatever. My brother actually worked over there and helped on the ranch. We used to ride our bikes over there. You know what? And the only way, by the way, for me to get to that freaking park now is probably to ride my bike, and I'm going to die on that road because there is no parking. I can't even park on Eva Lane because that's a private road. And I don't know, where do you want me to park my freaking car? Okay, that is a problem. So gated communities, and the community plan, was in 1990, and it was supposed to be for 50 years. Okay, and that means that we've got a whole lot of time left. I think we got 16 years or whatever left. It was a huge plan that was meant for a long time. And the reality is, guys, it says that we are to provide civic, cultural, recreational, educational facilities and activities needed by the community, which will encourage the interaction of residents in the pursuit of common interests, which provides a strong sense of community, such as 4-H, etc. Again, a gated community within our area is not going to do that. A road on which I'm now going to die because of the fact that, again, there's going to be traffic coming down that 2-lane road is not acceptable. And again, we deserve more time to consider any kind of this development because COVID and everything, and there was not even MAC meetings for a lot of that particular time. Thank you.
Hello, Rick Reedman. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit there. The name of this development is The Ranch. It's not SS Ranch, it's not Creekview Ranch, it's The Ranch. And it's The Ranch because that's what the entire community sees as The Ranch. Now, I live on Eva Lane, and we have minimum 2-acre parcels, which is directly across the street from here. This project, we pay a price for living on Eva Lane. And this whole community is going to have to pay that same price. When the wind blows correctly, it smells like sewage. There's a sewage treatment plant right there. Not just the 6 houses backed up to it, the whole place. It's going to have noise. You're going to sit there and listen to diesel locomotives that are going to be idling all night long. You're going to hear their horns. You're going to hear the cars clashing together. And you're going to smell the diesel if the wind's blowing in the correct direction, which is going to be an increased cancer risk. Also on this property,
for the last several decades, I don't know if anybody here's been home on opening day of dove season. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds of lead all over that property, and nobody's talked about that. There's lead there. That high pressure gas line that runs through there, the exact same size high pressure gas line that blew up in San Bruno, took out an entire neighborhood. So what I would envision this to be is if you did not change the zoning, you kept it 4.6 acres. You give them the 70 acres of open space. You give them the density transfer. And you could build 5 EVA lanes right there. 50 homes or so is about the math of 2 to 3 acre lots. It'd be 4 lots, 5 courts coming off the Vineyard Road. That would be something that fit in with the neighborhood. You could have your little white split rail fences all out, and I could still see from my house all the way to the creek. That's what should be on that property. And it's possible, and it's actually very doable. The one thing I want to talk about as well is with the disruption of the Shell House property recently, on my property alone, I have foxes that are digging underneath and around my barn, which causes big holes. My horses might break a leg. And this morning, at about 9 o'clock this morning, a coyote jumped a fence and chased one of my horses through a fence because these animals have nowhere to go now. You get rid of that, and it's over. Thank you.
Hello, Tammy Reedman. I'm with the Cowboy. Okay, first I want to give a little shout out to John. He did talk to us on Eva Lane, and he did put into consideration and made some changes. So you have put forth an effort, and I appreciate that. So he has spoke to us a little bit. But we told you we were going to push back on that density. It's too much. And what Rick was talking about with all those bigger lots, Wilton did it. People came, people bought it. It was fantastic until it flooded, of course. My son wants to buy in this area. You cannot find acreage in this area anymore. This is the last big piece left. He would buy one of these ranches. I know these would sell. This is prime neighborhood. This is a perfect place to live. And if you had these bigger acreage lots, kids could have 4-H. We could live like this is supposed to live here. You know, the animals coming across now it's crazy, dangerous. Also, you can get fire insurance down here still. You know, you can't up in Loomis. But if you built these big acreages here, they would move to here because you can get fire insurance here. So it's a safer place. It would maintain our unique way of life here if you let us do that. So that density is still too much, John. It really is. I know you want to do something good for the neighborhood, but that's too much. Okay? And I like your gate. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Ryan Pinder, Bob, Patty, and Ryan Hayes.
Good evening. My name's Ryan Pinder. So my wife and I moved up from Los Angeles specifically to get away from that, and that's why we chose this area. So I know you mentioned about in 2023 there were comments made about they appreciated the changes, but how many of them knew about the other projects going on? I'm probably going to guess most of them didn't even know about the huge mega projects that were going to be going on at developments. The mitigation measures being proposed are the equivalent of putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and then patting the patient on their back and sending them on their way while wishing them the best of luck. I'll give you an example. So this pickup and drop off here that goes to Vineyard, that doesn't solve a problem because Vineyard already is a problem as well as Cook Riolo. So it's not solving a problem, and it doesn't address the issue of capacity. Because of the 400 plus homes being built here, as was said earlier, it's not just 400 people. You've got families moving in. the Dry Creek or the Creekview Ranch Community School, elementary school, doesn't have the capacity now. My wife volunteers there. I have a first grader, and the teachers are at their wits' end. I mean, they're at their max. The kids and the teachers, they're overwhelmed. The classes are full. Building, I think it was on one of the other MAC meetings, it said maybe 3 more classrooms. That's not going to address the problem. That would address the problem as it exists today, but that's not going to address the problem of all of these community developments that are proposed and that are already happening. So I think the mitigation measures aren't going to solve the problem. The general and community plans that were created were done for a specific reason, and I think that's what everyone should be sticking to. It was disheartening to see all of the other developments that just completely got away with doing what they did and reducing the lot sizes as well. So I'd like to just put on the record that I'm for keeping the plan rural, low-density residential, and adding 400 plus more homes will compound the problem that exists today. And it's not just this project, as I mentioned, there's several other projects that are going on right now. Thousands of homes and people. I mean, you think about Fittyman and Baseline, where are all those kids gonna go to school? Where are all those people gonna shop, and where are they gonna travel to? There's nothing out there now, no development, no infrastructure. And one final point is, I have a personal friend who just got diagnosed with cancer. He has to go to SoCal and the Bay Area to get a second opinion on treatment, only because the doctors are telling him, we're too busy. We can't give you second opinions. We only can deal with first-hand cases right now. So all of these projects that are happening, I mean, we speak about the medical services, 911, that's nothing compared. Try to get a doctor's appointment. 6 months out, you have cancer, what are you gonna do? You're gonna wait 6 months and hope your cancer doesn't get worse? Something needs to be done and addressed.
Yeah, but Rick already eloquently stated my positions.
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Mr. Burslow. I really appreciate what you had to say. My name's Patty Green. Forgive me, I'm not much of a public speaker, but I feel I must speak my piece on behalf of my beloved oaks, the open space, and the wild animals. Please, I beg of you to reconsider rubber stamping the destruction of the last pristine area of Roseville. Everywhere around us, there's nothing but construction going on. From West Park and Riego and Baseline, Costco's coming, oh boy, to Sunset and Stack State Satellite, and now there's some godforsaken surf park coming out there. I was like, what? And also infill by the Galleria. I mean, we're creating a ginormous heat island with all the decimation of the oaks, paving and cementing of all the land. And where's the water going to come from to support all this gross development? Drought is going to come back. It's not a one-time thing that we just lived through. Then to add insult to injury, often after destroying Winton Ranch, you want to allow a private park in the middle of it. Are you going to endorse a nice sound wall to totally block the once free view of the gorgeous land that went with it? I guess so. And could we please dispose of the polite euphemisms, entitlements, and mitigations and just replace it with payola? I'm serious. Please preserve this beautiful property and stop the heinous project. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ryan Haynes. I have a map for you all. I just printed an aerial view map. It was an older map I found on the county website, but it depicts the general area, and a lot of the area that we today are fighting over has been fought over and described as planned future growth. But as you look at that map, I put the ranch on there as a tiny little yellow square that's left in the Dry Creek area. And the question I have for all of us is, in light of all the development around that, does that say to us that that needs to be filled in, or does that say to us that should be preserved? And so in light of all of what Patty just talked about, everything going on around us, the need for more housing does not seem like a great argument for the necessity of a project like this in an area like ours, especially given how many thousands and thousands of homes are currently being built currently right now and are getting through all around us. One of the things that I took issue with when I looked at the draft EIR was that the way it described the surrounding uses. As you go down Vineyard Road, if you look at the property just north of this map here, they said there was single-family residences. That does not accurately describe the uses of those properties. Those areas north of Winton Ranch are some of the largest and beautiful ranchettes we have in all of Dry Creek. As you drive along, and hopefully all of you did on the way in, and as we all enjoyed, the people who live here, there's the Texas Longhorn, who I found out his name is Jason, so now you guys all know that. There's a family of Zebus. It was a family of 3. They just had a baby. We have 4 Zebus now across the street from the ranch. There's miniature donkeys. There's a beautiful horse ranch. The Hobdays Ranch is beautiful. The horses they have out there are inspirational. We see some of the horse property folks riding their horses around town still, which we appreciate and love. It's part of the charm of our community. And the functioning vineyard down on the eastern end of the property. And so all those things were kind of swept over as single-family residences, but the preservation of lifestyle like that across the street from a neighborhood like this doesn't seem compatible. And one of the things we've learned, and as I've gotten involved in this process, is sort of the foundational principle in zoning is about compatibility. And current zoning obviously should have a say in it as well, because it's what it is and what it's supposed to be. And these legislative entitlements are seeking to change something that is and needs to be preserved for a purpose. We heard in the presentation that the developments in Dry Creek have trended towards smaller lot sizes. That is an understatement. We have been encroached upon, and the lots have shrunk and shrunk. Double S is an anomaly in their 36 lots on 37 acres. But these other places have just been squeezing and squeezing and asking more and more and more, and are a complete violation of the 1 to 2.3 acre minimums on portions of this property and the 4.6 acre minimums that are the majority of the property. And so I'm with my neighbors who agree that these densities are going to affect our lifestyle. And I would ask that this is not approved this evening.
Rod D., Harry White, James Wallace, and Robert Smith.
This mic or that mic? The big one, okay. Hi, yeah, my name's Harry White. I'm with California Native Plant Society and the Sierra Club. Thanks for the effort you put into the presentation. I've got a question about the FEIR, the content and format. I've been out of town. I have not read the FEIR yet. So the Sierra Club and CNPS submitted letters August 22nd and August 23rd. If I go to the FEIR, will there be a discussion of the points raised in those letters, point by point? Okay, so it's in there. Okay, great. Then briefly, I'll just use my time to give a quick summary of the concerns consistent with what people are saying here. Let's see. Let me just, oops, sorry. I'll read the CNPS summary. It's important to assess actual environmental impacts of destroying blue oak woodlands and mitigate resulting carbon emissions as mandated by the California Oak Woodlands Conservation Act. Concern about destruction of 60% of endemic blue oak woodlands on the site, despite Placer County general plan policies requiring new developments to preserve and protect native oak groves. The inclusion of Phase 7 within the plan, which calls for the elimination of over half the blue oak woodland to be replaced by development. The project's incursion into setback requirements, protecting streams, wetlands, and waterways, causing destruction of riparian flora and habitat. The failure to use native plants in landscaping plans while substituting non-natives, which have no habitat value and are not locally adapted. So actually, extensive use of native plants throughout the development could go a long way to mitigating many concerns. As it stands right now, we feel it doesn't comply with Placer County General Plan or the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan. So requirements like Policy 13 for landscaping, which is part of site development, where original vegetation has been removed or where additional plantings are included, the emphasis should be on drought-tolerant native species where possible. The cumulative effect of many new developments in West Placer are not being taken into account. People have made comments about animals being driven into smaller and smaller areas and so forth. But yeah, that's it for tonight. So thanks for being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wallace? And then Robert Smith?
Hello, my name is James Wallace. I live on Eva Lane, and I have a couple different points. The first thing is this doesn't have to happen. This isn't an entitlement. They're not entitled to getting a rezone. It's zoned for a purpose, so they don't have to get this. We don't owe them anything. My first point is with public safety. We were late for the meeting. We were coming through Antelope, and there's 5 young gentlemen on dirt bikes riding straight down PFE, right through the middle, 5 wide. And as we've discussed with CHP, who patrols the streets around here, they have 1 officer in the evenings stationed from Colfax on down. So where do you think all the kids are going to be playing out that are going to be living in this neighborhood? Fire and EMS, my mother-in-law died, and I know we've already talked about this before at previous meetings, but my mother-in-law died partially because services were not able to get to her soon enough. We have our wonderful fire department on Dry Creek, or on Cookriolo, but no paramedics. They showed up on scene, can do basically nothing but CPR and breathe. They had to wait for backup mutual aid from Roseville City to come and actually start giving medications and put a tube down my mother-in-law's throat so she could breathe, and then wait for the ambulance to come and transport her to the hospital where she ultimately passed. And that's not uncommon, and that's just going to keep happening. We add more and more and more and more and more homes out here. We don't have the services to provide for it. We've talked at previous meetings where the Dry Creek Station is trying to get paramedics. I'm a firefighter paramedic. It's getting harder and harder to find paramedics these days. They've even said they've got the funding for it, and no, they haven't been able to hire for it. So the problem's not going to get any better. We're just adding more homes. And last thing, I spoke at the meeting we had at your guys' office. I spoke with one of your bosses when I was outside of the room, and I was trying to talk to him about sticking with the 1 acre minimums. And he said, well, we don't need it. I mean, there's no point in sticking with 1 acre minimums. People don't need that anymore. And we live in a community where we raise animals. My kids raise pigs. You know, we have kids raising goats, rabbits, chickens, turkeys. If we keep this to 1 acre minimums, we still have that kids still have that option to raise and to stick with the community plan and the way that this community is meant to be. With this project, not only is it make it to where it's not possible as far as land size, there's also a homeowners association, which actually makes it completely against the rules, where you can't even have a chicken in your backyard. So, thank you very much.
My name's Robert Smith. I live on Glen Lane, which is off Cookriolo. My hat is off to you guys, especially you, Rick. That was impressive. We've lived in this area for 44 years, and we've always asked the county to keep it a 2 acre minimum, and they haven't. We've fought for that for years, and so it's slowly being eaten away, especially with this project. During the rezoning fiasco that we went through a couple of months ago, everybody that got up said the Dry Creek area was a very pristine area. Everyone enjoyed coming and living here. And you've said the same thing. And so remember what all those people said when they got up to the microphone and they said, please keep this area pristine. It's fun to have a country area, and that's what everyone's saying tonight. Vineyard cannot handle that much traffic. When the school, when the parents are dropping the kids off for school at Dry Creek, you have solid cars from PFE Road to Baseline. You don't want to be on the road. And then when you add all those homes to Vineyard, you're going to have the same problem. It's crazy to have a stop sign at Eva Lane and then a roundabout just down the street, and then also the area where you would turn to left to go down to drop your kids off for school. Again, you're just creating more traffic issues. The people at the Roseville waste plant, they go down to Cucriolo every morning and get water to test it, to make sure that they're not polluting Dry Creek. We still, if the wind is blowing the wrong way, we still can smell sewage. And so when you add that many homes to the sewage treatment plant, what are you going to get? All the sewage from Morgan Creek goes to the Roseville sewage treatment plant already. And so again, you're creating more issues, for us in this area. They should have probably never bought that ranch because it doesn't fit with our community. And I hope that you protect our community and tell them that this type of development is not for this area. They need to go find someplace else. Yeah, they spent a lot of money to buy it, but they should have looked into that before they purchased the land. And please don't make us pay the price. Anyway, thank you.
Kevin Dunley, George Brown, and Terry, I'm going to butcher that. Oh. Terry.
I recognize you.
All right, Kevin Donnelly. I live on Silky Oak right here on the other side of Whispering Creek neighborhood. So mentioned in the project, so again, Board Member Rick, thank you for all your comments. I had them all written down here as well, so I just want to echo those. Mentioned in the project, first of all, when do we see the details of the walking path and everything, the trail going into under Cucriolo and adding it to the regular path? So I'm not sure if that's part of this project or this EIR, but is that part of the plan? We did mention on the slides, certain slides, the closer developments is Whispering Creek, which is my neighborhood, Cabral Ranch, which is also being built, and Double S Ranch. Only the Double S Ranch was mentioned in that slide, but those three other communities are similar of size. These three developers have figured out how to make money. I bought the home, so I think that could be moved on to this property. School traffic, I walk my kindergartner every morning, every afternoon. I come from literally across the street. I see all the traffic coming from PFE direction, very little traffic coming from Vineyard direction. The school drop-off area, this looks like a neighborhood walking area. I think all the kids could probably walk to school, not being dropped off at school, so I'm not sure the school drop-off site is even useful to anyone else, since most of the neighbors are coming from PFE. And then also just to finish this off, my 3 and 5-year-old, every time we drive down Vineyard, we look for the cows, and when they can't see the cows, they tell me to go drive quietly because they are still sleeping. So with that, thank you so much.
Hello, George Brown. I live on St. Julian myself. I appreciate the comments about the MAC from the 90s. We were very pointed. So how did we get here? I mean, we're talking about now discussing a developer's desire to put 5,000 to 6,000 square foot lots in the middle of a rural community. That was nothing. There was never any comprehension in any of the past MAC or any of the past community plan building. Did we ever foresee the possibility of someone coming up and describing Winton Ranch as 4,000 to 5,000 square foot lots? We're not NIMBY or anti-growth. we approved Placer Vineyards. We approved 16,000 homes in the west end of this community. And we did so to protect the heart of this community. It was a trade-off that Bill Santucci and myself and Fred Yeager, who was the director of planning, all talked about. If we approved those plans and allowed those developments to continue, it would take the pressure off of Dry Creek itself, the heart of the community. And so we took one for the team. We gave up a lot of land that could have been more rural in order to protect the core of the community. And now we're coming back in 15, 20 years later and saying, oh, that's not protected. That land is zoned 4.6 acres per dwelling. We owe nobody anything in regards to giving them additional transfer of density. Now, if they work it out so that we get to a position where they're working to 1 to 2 acres, I'm amenable to that discussion. But I'm not even close to being amenable to the discussion that talks about lots like this in the community. The amount of pesticides that are going to be coming from those houses, 400 houses, and going into a Dry Creek is ridiculous. There are no state laws and that regulate this, requiring us to devalue our properties like that. And the general plan is exactly the opposite. It talks about doing everything they can to protect agriculture and sensitive habitat land areas. And we owe it to everybody to uphold the community plan and the general plan. We also talk a lot about, especially the planners, they talk about providing lifestyle alternatives. There are currently in 95747, between what we've allocated and what Roseville's allocated, over 25,000 suburban lots. We have, you know how many are on the market in all of Placer County right now? 2 to 5 acres? 38 houses in all of Placer County. We are not providing that type of a lifestyle, and clearly, if an area is going to provide that, we're an area that should. I have a lot more to say. I need your amount of time.
Okay, Rick probably covered most of whatever I'm going to say, so I'll say it anyway. But as much as we prefer to keep our open spaces we have now, we expect that there's going to be build out in our community. But why do we have a community plan if the county's just going to approve anything developers want to build? I know I've heard that the county is working on a new general plan, but we don't have that plan right now. What we have is the community plan for Dry Creek. That says that it allows for a range of densities from 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre or approximately half-acre lot sizes. This land in this area remains in relatively large parcels, thus increasing the opportunity for cooperative planning for the ultimate and most appropriate use of the land. The minimum lot sizes in a planned unit development within low-density residential districts should not be less than 12,500 square feet. A small percentage of lots up to a maximum of 20% may be as small as 10,000 square feet, and that's what it says in our community plan. When I pointed this out in my DEIR comments, the response was, if the county approves these entitlements, then the development would be consistent with the community plan. I don't understand how approving these entitlements and rezones would be considered consistent with our community plan. You're simply going to add them into the community plan. It's not part of the community plan. This developer wants to change the land use designations from rural low-density residential to medium-density residential, can't say that word tonight, and rezone the project site from its current zoning. Not only do they want to build homes on lots much smaller than our community plan designates, but they want to make homes on those lots, even on those small lots, even larger by asking for a variance to increase the building coverage. The homes in this community are predominantly single-story, but this developer is proposing two-story homes, all within 5 feet of each other on either side and in back. That's a small lot. It's disingenuous when they say that the overall project density would be 2 residential units per acre. That's not actually how the homes will be built. It's just an average they've come up with based on the total acreage and the number of homes. It's not reality. The density proposed in the project is definitely not compatible with existing homes in this area. There are no other tightly packed homes on hundreds of acres in the immediate surrounding area. Please hold these developers to the Dry Creek Community Plan and stop letting them bulldoze our community and build homes on much smaller lots than are specified in our Dry Creek Community Plan. Thank you.
Any other comments from the community? Please come up and state your name.
My name's Don Witt. I moved here about 8 years ago, and it was for the community. And everybody here, you've said basically everything that I could say. And I wanted to just come up here to say that I'm another voice that opposes this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what Mr. Brown was talking about and the development of the Vineyards project, and I've referred to this a number of times in here, don't become a special planning area, is what I encourage you. Is that's what has happened to the west side of basically Watt Avenue at this time. Is there any comment from the county staff at this point in regard to some of the questions that were raised by the community? For instance, transportation and/or any of the other elements thereof, the school. And is there the superintendent of the school here?
Well, I don't know if the superintendent and the school is here, and if they are, maybe they can raise their hand and identify themselves. I don't see them here. Certainly, if it's the pleasure of the MAC that we respond to comments and questions that were raised, we can do that. And Karen and I have been taking notes, and we'd be happy to run through those things. I think there's, probably a handful of things that we can clarify from the presentation. Obviously, we received a lot of comments about the people's perspectives on the value of the project, and those things are important. So in terms of technical aspects, I think that's where we could probably focus our time, if that's your desire.
Well, I think that would be valuable.
Yep.
Not that it's going to sway any opinions
Yep.
at this point, but I think that would be valuable.
Okay.
If you come up and state your name real quick.
Kathy Fields. I live on Eva Lane. One thing that I haven't heard anything about is that if it's approved, the period of construction and all the mitigating factors that may come into play there. The dirt, the dust, the noise, the light, the construction access point, where's that going to be? Because Vineyard cannot handle all those heavy trucks going up. We have enough of them already going up and down the road, the dirt haulers and the heavy equipment, and that road's going to break down. So I'm not sure if that's if this is the appropriate time to talk about that period of time.
Well, I think the county staff is able to
Okay.
either give us comfort on that or tell you you're correct.
Because
One
that's
or
what
the
we're
other.
going to live with for, I don't know, maybe up to 5 years, I hear, all the construction going on. We already take in a lot of animals on our side of the road to feed with the geese, the ducks, the doves, the peacocks, and now we hear coyotes over here. And I just see that happening more and more because they're being run out of that area. And during construction, it's going to be really bad because they're going to be scared. They're going to want to get away from all that noise and dirt and dust. Once it's all built out, that's a different story. But it's the whole period during construction that is more my concern too. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
So, Walt, if I may, I think maybe what Alex Fish again, maybe what I'd like to do is just kind of help set up the discussion just a little bit to help us understand the processes that the county undertakes when a private development project is presented, and they do request, and I know there's some dissatisfaction with the terminology, but entitlements is the actual technical terminology for the permissive permit approvals that would allow something to happen. I'll set things up kind of a little bit high, and I think maybe what we can do is just kind of march through in the order of some of the comments received to clarify a few of the technical issues. I think a lot of the things that were discussed were more somewhat subjective in terms of overall perspectives. I respect all those perspectives, by the way. I'm not rendering any judgment on those things. I just want to make sure that we're kind of focused in terms of how the evaluation process works. So I did hear a number of comments pertaining to some of the conventions of how the environmental analysis is conducted. And there are some nuances in terms of the planning work that we do in terms of evaluating a project in terms of its potential impacts to the environment, disclosing what those impacts are through a CEQA process, California Environmental Quality Act, and describing them in very objective terms that I know sometimes people take exception to because it does strip away some of the other aspects of that. In terms of those things, I do just want to clarify for people that does not mean that there are not other aspects of the project analysis that will come out in the written staff report that are more policy driven. And a lot of the things that I hear here tonight on the conventions around the type of community that you want, the structure, the amenities, those often are, they often do have obviously environmental consequences to them. There are also policy decisions around those. So I just did want to make that distinction, okay? So maybe what I can do and help me, if you will, to guide me in terms of if I gloss over something, I'm going to go through and take the commenters in order and pick out technical issues that we need to clarify or add additional information into the record. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, appreciate that. And just starting, Rick, and I apologize, I don't know your last name. Can you? Thank you. Just starting a little bit, you had some comments on some technical corrections in the PowerPoint. Thank you for those. Took note of those, and we will take care of and address those things. One thing that was raised initially early on was the overall PM peak hour trips, the traffic trips. That was a comment you raised. My colleague here, Phil Vashon, senior engineer with Public Works, helped me look that up, and I think we identified that it wasn't the number that was on the screen there. It was 452, approximately 10% of the overall trip rate for the day for the 4,446 trips. So I want to clarify that. Community plan consistency came up quite a bit, and the nice lady that just spoke, and by the way, I missed your name, but the answer that was provided in the EIR, and I know sometimes that does not sit well with people, and that's one of the issues I brought up. It's not an environmental issue, it is a policy decision, and that's why the answer to that is somewhat shortened in terms of the CEQA analysis, because it's not directly a CEQA issue. It is a policy decision around the ultimate project approval. Kara, I don't want to take anything away from you here, so if you want to jump in on anything that you want to address.
Address the Everlane stop sign. The stop sign, Everlane.
Yeah.
All right, Phil Vashon with the Department of Public Works, and I guess there was a question about the Eva Lane stop sign, or the always stop. So Vineyard Road in particular, what What I would say is that the project is, providing two new roundabouts, which will help to calm traffic along Vineyard Road and reduce the overall speeds along Vineyard Road. It will also force people to use the roundabout, which is a different way that you'd use an always stop. Obviously, people can run always stops, and they have before, and it can be a problem at times, and we try and get the CHP out here to remedy that type of thing. But I would say that the roundabouts are really a good positive with the project. As far as the Eva Lane always stop, I think the roundabouts will help with that. Only time can tell if people will continue to, run it, if they're running it right now, but we can get the CHP on board. We've also been successful in using our flashing speed limit signs out on Vineyard Road and PFE Road to try and slow people down out there, and we have them at our disposal, and we can continue to use them. We don't have to wait to use them. We can use them now. But I don't know if that accurately or completely answers the question about the always stop. Well, I think we have conditioned in there to remove the always stop to a side street stop, but we can do one or the other, at your discretion. We can talk about leaving it an always stop. So.
Walt, does the MAC have any additional questions for Mr. Vashon? Okay. I think maybe next, yeah.
And if I might, and this is in regard to how I felt after the last MAC that we had, and it really doesn't pertain to this project specifically, but you ever felt like you outlived your usefulness? That's how I felt after the last MAC, and it took me a couple of weeks to get through that and figure out where is my usefulness. How can I be useful here, sitting here, and trying to recognize the concerns of all of us, not just one or two of us, but all of us. And in doing so, I was like 11 meetings with the transportation, and I've been serving on the MAC since Rocky and up to date. And we didn't have any meetings in here about transportation since then as a MAC. Now, I know that there was a plan set forth, and the community plan, and how the traffic was supposed to go, but I was wondering when was the 11th meeting that said, okay, the roundabouts are gonna suffice in regard to PFE and et cetera, on down the line. I'm not asking you to pull that out of your hat, but I would like to know that eventually here to report back to us. Plus, when we talked about back when we were doing the vineyards, we were putting together that project, and there was questions about, are we gonna put in sound walls? And the answer back from county staff at that point is that sound walls aren't a good thing to put in because they just increase sound or bounce back and forth. My question a while ago was in regard to the sound walls. Now it looks like a sound wall off a baseline, and I posed that question at that time, and we were supposed to hear back in regard to that. Now we're having a sound wall proposed for this new project, which at that point in time, back when we were reviewing those projects, that was given to us as that's a deal breaker. We're not putting any sound walls in. So what I'm doing is just asking for that information to come back to us in regard to that.
Yeah, in answer to your question about, when was the last meeting before the transportation element was adopted. The element was adopted in August of 2012, so I imagine the last meeting was prior to that. I don't know exactly when that was, but I imagine that was probably in earlier summer of 2012, Walt. As far as the sound wall issue, I'd have to get back to you on that. So.
Sure, thank you, Phil. And in regard to that, when county staff came last month and they were telling us this is the plan and this is what you've adopted, your community has adopted this. And it was very difficult for me to swallow that pill because having served here longer than 12 years now, but now here we are. And in order to say that we have approved that, but yet we're not, as a community, we don't want this development. As a community, we didn't want Creekview, although my vote didn't count in regard to that when it came here. We don't want Mill Creek. We didn't want the rezone to happen. But because you have to be a little bit flexible in regard to all of this stuff, you know, you have to be. And because there was pressure put upon the community, we approved as a MAC lots 1 and 2, I believe, or whatever they were in regard to, and then also in conjunction with the fact that Mill Creek, the Mill Creek project, when we all met together with the Board of Supervisors, that was put forth to the people that were there with the Board of Supervisors, that project had already been approved, and it hadn't been. It hadn't even come into this MAC as an informational item. But we were aware of our agreement that, okay, we don't want 10, 11, 12, or whatever the, you know, right off the top, I don't know which lots that were set aside or proposed for the rezone, but we did follow suit in hopes that we could maintain that area as far as density housing. So we're moving forward. So now we're right in the middle of this, and I don't see how, without being too much more long-winded in regard to this, I don't see how that based on a 2012 meeting where the transportation was adopted at that time, that it can be brought back to us saying, you as a community approved this. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then we'll move, unless you have any other comments in regard to that, Alex, or...
I don't think I have any other comments regarding that.
Okay, Walt, so Kara and I were going through notes we took, and I've got a few topics, and I want to see if I get the major ones, and you tell me what I missed. Impacts to school facilities, right? Public services, and particularly funding mechanisms for those expanded public services. Odor impacts of the wastewater treatment plant to new residences. Water supply, availability of water supply. And I just kind of wrote a side note. The gentleman, I believe it's Harry White with the Native Plant Society. I think there are some updates for him pertaining to an adjustment to the project that we can also address. Obviously, we heard a lot of comments about the changing community character and the perspectives on those. And I heard all those and understand them. I don't know that there's a lot we can say to that other than we did. We're acknowledging those right now. So other items that I should put on the list for us?
No, I don't believe so. And
Okay. Well, let's start then. Maybe I'll ask Kara if she can address water supply and school facilities. I think the applicant team is also going to help out with the school facilities discussion.
Okay, so just to add about water supply, so the project will be served by Cal Am Water. They obtain their water from Placer County Water Agency, PCWA, and they have provided a will serve that they will be able to have the capacity to serve the project. In Appendix B of the final EIR, there is a letter from the Dry Creek Joint Elementary School District, so I encourage you to look through the final EIR if you haven't already. But the school has, so the project anticipates about 317 to 318 students from this project going to Dry Creek School. The applicants are donating the 2.8 acre lot. It's the southern lot just south of the school drop-off site to the school. They anticipate to construct around 10 new permanent classrooms, which will further increase school capacity. That's in their letter. That is in Appendix B of the final EIR. And that there is sufficient capacity at the Creekview Ranch School to accommodate students for the ranch subdivision. So that letter was provided by the school district, that they do have adequate capacity for this project and are able to take on that secondary 2.8 acre lot for additional facilities. Also, to address the Harry White's comments in regards to the native landscaping. So the project applicant has agreed to and is conditioned by the project to comply with the Placer County landscape design guidelines and the Dry Creek Community Plan guidelines to provide native and drought tolerant plants. There are additional requirements for landscaping along Vineyard Road to include larger, I think 24 inch box trees and things like that to encourage the larger growth along those frontages. And then we can also talk about, do you guys want to add anything really quick before I, okay. And then we can also talk about the funding mechanisms for the additional services. I'll let Alex kind of go into detail, but there are community facility districts that will be created by this project for funding.
Okay, so thank you, Kara. So just to make sure that we're providing topical coverage, and by the way, for anybody that's interested in delving into the full details, tomorrow by 5 p.m., the Planning Commission staff report for that October 24th hearing will be published. It'll be the full report packet with the full project conditions. This project, like probably just about all of our projects, especially in these areas down here, does have a requirement to create or annex into an existing CFD or Community Facilities District. This is the Melrose Act of 1982, or a community service area, depending on which of those structures has already been put in place. And in this community, we have multiple CSAs for different services. And that does cover things like maintenance of lighting and public roads, lighting of public roads and streets, public stormwater drainage systems, also for maintenance of public trails and park system improvements, county-owned open space. Importantly, for this discussion here tonight, emergency services for fire protection, including ambulance and paramedic services, and also for law enforcement services. And so as part of the analysis of these larger projects in particular, there is an engagement between the project team, both on the county side and the applicant side, through our CEO's office and staff to evaluate service demands and funding mechanisms and fair share and how to make all those funding mechanisms work. I can't tell you a lot of details about that. I'm not directly involved in that. But those are requirements of the project. And as if the project were approved and were to be carried out, those funding mechanisms are required to be put in place before the project is able to develop. So those are things that happen with what's called a small lot map. When that's carried out is typically when those annexations would occur with the final details of the funding requirements. Questions about that?
No, not
Okay.
from me. Anybody else?
Well, I was just looking at the alternative comparison summary on the last page, page 40. And I see several of them where there's reduced densities. And, well, first I have a different question. Were there street lights planned for this community? Are there street lights part of, okay.
There are?
Very minimal.
Yes.
Just
They're
just
minimal.
where.
I thought we were a dark community.
They're dark sky compliant, and they're in minimal locations at intersections for safety.
So in accordance with the Dry Creek Community Plan, as I hear folks pointing out, we do have standards that the only street lighting that's allowed is where it's needed for roadway safety. So typically at intersections, those roundabouts, I would anticipate anywhere where you have traffic coming together from different directions.
Okay.
Okay.
Back-
Couple other, yes,
Back
sir.
to my comparison, the hydrology and water quality, the fewer units would create greater problems, which says more impervious surface area. If the lots are bigger, isn't there less impervious area?
Candace, is that something? I'm gonna ask Candace Bartlett, senior engineer, to address that.
It's very fragile. I think that's relating to when there's not as much open space set aside, then each lot that's created has more flexibility to develop their own lot with more impervious surface. Whereas these proposals have so much more open space designated, there's zero development in those open space areas.
Well, I'm a drainage engineer, and the imperviousness is based on lot size as far as percentage of impervious areas. If you have a 1 acre lot, you are down like 20 or 30 or 40% impervious. When you're at 3 or 4, you're at 50 or 60, and at 6,000 square feet, you're at 70 or 80. So this, to me, is completely misleading and frustrating, I guess. And what was the other one? That there's going to be greater disturbances with less lots. I mean, and it almost sounds like we're going to then tear up the entire area because we're not going to worry about the trees or the floodplain. It seems like the development area would be kind of the same. Maybe the park wouldn't be there, but that's 10 acres. I don't see how you would have more disturbances because of less lots built.
Again, I think the assumptions in the drainage report, sorry, I'm getting too close to this. The assumptions in the drainage report, you're right that there are general assumptions for assumed percent impervious area on lots of standard sizes. But I think if you own a 1 acre lot, you are allowed to flatscape as much as you want. You can add as much as you want. In these developments where they're set aside open space, it's more than just the floodplains. They've set aside more than just the floodplain areas. There's additional protected areas as well, more than the minimum requirements. So I'm assuming that that's what those assumptions are alluding to in the hydrology analysis.
Well,
And I can
this puts
do
a
more,
whole new light on my drainage analysis.
and I can look into it further and provide
Okay,
additional information for you
that's-
guys, of course.
That's fine, but it just seemed like it actually indicates that less density penalizes some of these components. And I would like to sit down one day and have an argument about that one. But anyway, thanks.
I'll just add as well, so when looking at those alternatives, I'm just gonna note here on this slide. So they're taking into account the existing land use, right? So they're looking at developing 81 acres and 40 acres of open space, which is why there would be more disturbance as versus the proposed project, which is incorporating more open space and less developed area, if that makes sense. So that's why those alternatives may or show that there's greater disturbance as
Right,
well.
and I understand that and see the map and all that other stuff. But again, if you go down to the real density, I would bet lunch that there will be less impervious area as a result of that, but, okay.
And I do think Kara having a lot more specific knowledge of the project, being the project manager, I think that she is correct in terms of the conclusions of the analysis of alternatives. However, we will definitely look into that more. We're going to talk to the ER consultant, consult with ESD, and make sure that we're ready to address that for the hearing. Okay. Couple other items I wanted to address. There were some issues raised about odors from the wastewater treatment plant. Just based on some recent CEQA case law from maybe 5-6 years ago, Without getting into the details, the wastewater treatment plant exists. To the extent we add new land uses, those things are already there in terms of the odors, right? And I did hear, some concerns about increased, effluent causing additional odors, just based on my knowledge of wastewater treatment plant operations. That there's, it's kind of at a fixed rate for the most part. But at any rate, how they handle that is through buyer's awareness deed disclosures. It's also similar to if you live next to an airport, something like that, that has a nuisance characteristic. And that's how those are addressed in terms of compliance with county code, and why it's deemed a less than significant impact, because that use and that odor already exists. And it's the new use that is having to deal with that, if that makes sense.
So it's enclosed in their buying the house, so it doesn't smell.
Odors. Yes. Odors. Is that correct? The whole? Yeah. Okay. The last thing, just one additional note that I did note. You had raised an issue, I believe, Walt, in terms of the conventions around noise barriers and how we deal with that. It used to be previously was an impact analysis of CEQA, where you have new uses going in and you have transportation noise sources that affect them. Very similar to the discussion I had. Those transportation noise sources already exist. In terms of the noise barrier treatment, we still nonetheless need to meet Placer County noise element standards for maximum exposure for sensitive receptors. Sensitive receptors are humans. And so throughout the Dry Creek community, we have, for the most part, there, I think Vineyards is what you were referring to with the noise walls, Riolo and Placer Vineyards, but most of the other projects in the Dry Creek Community Plan area have used a combination of landscape buffers, setbacks, and then to the extent walls are built, they're usually bermed with earth, and that does change the signature of the noise, right? It reduces it, makes it so it's not refracted back based on when that car is driving by, right? And so that's, again, why this project is incorporated in an earth and noise barrier to protect the residences that would be located behind there, and also to ensure that that noise is not refracted back to an off-site property across the street on the north side of the road. So with that, I will turn it back to the MAC unless you have additional questions.
Yeah, I think that my main concern was the reference of it being a sound wall.
Okay.
Because the sound walls were a definite no. We're not doing sound walls. So I don't know if you want to change the verbiage, which isn't up to me to saying that or not, but.
That was my mistake to call it that.
Sound barrier.
Which is still a sound wall. But that being said, we'll move forward. So this is an action item. And being that it's an action item for the ranch subdivision, PLN 22-00359, I need a motion.
I will make a motion that we don't accept the proposal as is, and maybe have them go back to what the community plan says. Follow those guidelines. I also have, I know I made a motion, so I need to have somebody second it, but I do have a question once we do that for both of them, I think. So do you want me to do the question first, or?
I think we should follow through.
Okay. So, motion.
And I would second that motion.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
It stands unanimous that the Municipal Advisory Committee Council of West Placer Mac District 1 stands opposed to the ranch subdivision. Rick, if you go ahead and ask your question at this time.
A couple questions. Once, I didn't get an answer for the park, the private park access. I know that you can be able to walk into it. Is there going to be parking for people? or we just got to walk from wherever we happen to live if we wanted to go to that park?
Which is probably a concern that we would have when it goes to the planning commission, because we've already voted to oppose the.
Okay, another question was the Creekview Ranch subdivision, was there, you said that the school district already made plans for 10 new classrooms for the ranch, but what about for the Creekview Ranch subdivision, which will probably need 20 classrooms? Was there something in that plan?
Okay, yes, so the Dry Creek community or school district, they, in their master plan, they analyzed, they had incorporated Creekview Ranch as well. I don't know that the 10 classrooms address Creekview Ranch specifically, but in their master plan, they had included development of Creekview Ranch.
Okay, because that, yeah, that would be important, because at 30 kids per class, 10 classrooms would take care of the ranch, but based on the same figures, you would need 20 more classrooms, and I don't recall hearing anything about proposed property or anything for them set aside for that, but
So just in fairness, Creekview Ranch isn't on the agenda, but if you need me or my staff to look into anything, I'll give you my card, send me an email, and happy to get you information on that post-hearing.
thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move forward. Item number 7, local government, District 1 supervisor, countywide, and District 1 updates. Anything from Supervisor Gore's office? I know where.
Just one thing I wanted to let you know. So next month in November, we are not planning to have the MAC meeting for 2 reasons. One is there's a very large item before the Board of Supervisors in Tahoe that our CEDRA team will be addressing. And then the next day I go out of town to a state conference. So I do not desire to put the burden on our planning staff for that MAC meeting in November, so we will not have the meeting in November. So I wanted to give you all a heads up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gore. As noted in here, we've already had public comments in regard to this item number 6. If there's any other community input at this time, now is a good time. Please state your name.
Laura Billard, if you haven't figured it out yet. The reality is, and one thing that, one of the things, and Robin and I have had a discussion, Alex and I had a very long, hour-long discussions, and I do appreciate you taking the time. But the deal is that when these plans get approved, there is a problem because a lot of times the planning commissioners, they don't know the specifics of these things. And I'm going to give you these pictures right here real quick. Last MAC meeting by someone down on Glacier Lane or whatever, but I've been watching the development over on Brady Lane, and if you guys look at this, and apparently this sucker is actually illegal by the county standards, and if you look right here, this is the property line. Okay, of the neighbors right there. Okay, and there is a 10-foot wall. I want you guys to have a vision right now. Okay, 10-foot wall. I don't know how high 10 foot is, but it's above that sign right there. And all of a sudden, within 18 inches of your property, there is now being built a 10-foot wall of dirt. And on top of that are going to be houses. Okay, so envision. Apparently that's allowed under county code. That's a problem. Okay, so now within 18 inches, 10 feet of dirt and houses on top of that. And again, this is not about berms or anything else. This is just about, somebody, basically their property being encroached upon. If you look at the next page, it actually has a picture of the house next door, and you used to be able to actually see their house in that from the road. And then the cute little part, the next one is about a sign that was posted when they were actually, proposing to do all of this. And apparently, I just found out at the planning meeting last night that isn't even legal to post it, by the way, to telephone poles. So our PG&E poles. So the dude posted it, and this is actually the area from basically looking back towards Brady from East Drive. And the deal is, if you will look at that, guys, the reality is anybody building, if I now want to build something on my property, right? Am I going to have to match that 10 foot? Our community plan says that the new needs to match the old, not the old needs to match the new. You have now ruined my ability to do what I want to do on my property if you suddenly give me a 10-foot freaking mound of dirt. Okay. And again, thank you, Alex, for taking the time or whatever we were discussing that. And I asked you guys, do you ever consider the surrounding parcel? And the answer came back, no. And then I'm like, I know. And I'm like, what the crud? I'm having a moment. He goes, we wait for the old people to come in and say, hey, I want to build something, and then go, well, maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. That really sucks. We need to take those things into consideration when we're approving these types of projects. And then Robin, one of the things that we talked about is the planning commission. She said, well, they don't really technically get the height elevations and everything, but nor would they be able to, in fact, interpret it. Okay. So they're put in a bad position, but I want to make people aware. And if this is allowed in the county, we need to make sure that this gets changed. You should not be able to build a 10-foot freaking mound of dirt right next to my property and then put houses on top of it. So we're protecting the developers, by the way, and not the people who are already in the community. We need protection. I should not have to fear my county. And right now I do. Thank you.
They make me take my flag off their pole.
Rick Reedman. In our last MAC meeting, we talked about water and how, Placer County gets the water before it goes into Folsom Lake. So this is all surface water we're using. And I'm trying to understand how this chess game works, because the city of Roseville gets their water out of Folsom Lake. So if we're taking it out before it gets there, and now they're drilling big holes in the ground and make my wells go dry, but you're saying, that's already surface water over there. It doesn't work. There's only so much water. The water in Folsom Lake has been inadequate for many years. And the more we pull out of it before it gets into Folsom Lake, the less adequate it's going to be. And the more of these giant wells are going to be sunk around. And everybody's seen the Central Valley where the land itself is collapsing because they've pumped too much water out of it. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. So let's just reconsider how we're getting our water and how we're approving these developments. And I think the county should be embarrassed that they actually approved Creekview over here, because it's a monstrosity. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't appreciate the adversarial attitude that I feel like I'm getting from council over here, from the county. They're not supposed to represent a developer. They're supposed to be representing the county, and we're part of the county. And I feel like we're just being told this is the way it's going to be. And I do not appreciate that. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Pakurek, Pakyurek. I've lived here 14 years, and with all of the increasing developments, it's getting harder to get out of these country roads during rush hour. We only have a 2-lane road to get out of this community, and you forgot to mention that on your summary list. We have PFE, we have Cucriolo, and we have Vineyard, and all of those roads are two-way roads. And to get out of this community during rush hour gets more and more complicated. I don't have a child that goes to Creekview Ranch because she's in high school, and she goes to a charter school, and there's no busing to a charter school. So I do have to drive through the traffic on those two-way roads during rush hour. I used to always take PFE, and now PFE is too crowded, and there's more housing going up on PFE and Antelope, so it's going to get worse there. So now I have to fight the Creekview Ranch traffic to go out Vineyard. And it's just a lot of traffic to get through. And you want to add 4,500 more trips a day? That's not going to happen on Vineyard or PFE or Cucriolo. The other issue is the animals. There are a lot of animals on those country roads. There's a lot of roadkill, and there's a herd of deer. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? There's a herd of deer that live in this community, and I've almost hit 2 deer already on Vineyard and PFE. I had to slam on my brakes with my 2 young children at the time they were young, and I almost hit a deer, and you want to add 4,500 more trips on these country roads. I was on Vineyard one night, and a deer came out. I slowed down, but he hit my car with his antlers. He lived, but you want to add 4,500 more trips on these country roads, and there's no sidewalks. There are bikers on Vineyard. Even though there's not a bike lane, there are still bikers. And when you pass a biker without a bike lane, you have to give them 3 feet. That's the law. And you're swerving into the other person's lane. Or you have to wait for the traffic to clear this way before you can go around the biker, and that backs up traffic too. And you want to add 4,500 trips on that road. I won't agree with it. I won't put up with it. I already can't stand it. It's too much traffic. And then I'm also really upset about changing the rural look of our community. That's what we moved here for wide open spaces. And I'm not happy with that.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. It's just a quick question. I was just curious whether it be for this presentation to the MAC or to any other project. I was just curious about like who exactly comes through and makes these presentations. Like when you're talking about community plan consistency and some of those subjective things you were talking about, Alex, that might not be included in CEQA, but that are definitely included in this presentation, like those community plan consistencies, like encourages land uses that are compatible. Who makes those calls? Who makes those determinations that get presented ultimately to the MAC and to our planning commission? Like who decides those subjective things that they're including? Because like the residents would probably disagree with quite a bit of those conclusions made that are presented as fact to our leadership. So who does that? That's my question.
Mr. Chair, if I might add, or ask rather, we did conclude the presentation and the action item on the ranch. Would you like me, and I can certainly take a question if the
Okay,
MAC
just
wants
leave
to
your
direct
card
it
at the
to
end.
me.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. Thank you for the question. I turned me off. As we move forward in regard to this, I appreciate the public's comments. The correspondence that was received is on the agenda provided by Bonnie Gore's office, and now we'll go ahead and call it an adjournment unless any other comments from the MAC at this time. And the next one will be hopefully in December. Thank you.